The night whispered softly through the cracks of a forgotten world where dreams bled into the shape of reality, and in that silent fold of time a girl opened her eyes not to the present but to what had not yet come. Her name was Lyra and she was only 16, yet her mind was a sky filled with tomorrows she could not understand. She would wake before dawn and see moments that had not yet happened, faces she did not know yet felt she had met, lives she had not touched yet carried their memories like shadows in her breath. She would close her eyes and see the rain before it fell, she would smell the earth before it broke open, she would hear laughter in the streets before the sun rose, and when it came her heart would tremble, for she knew what was real had already been inside her before it ever existed outside. The first time she spoke of it people laughed, they said she was only dreaming too much, they said she had a wild imagination. But when she told her mother about the storm before it arrived, when she told her father about the letter that would come, when she spoke of the stranger at the door the next morning, everyone looked at her differently. Her mother's eyes no longer held warmth but worry, her father's silence grew heavier as though words could no longer reach her. He told her to keep it quiet, to never speak of what she saw, for the world did not understand things it could not control. But Lyra could not stop seeing the future. Even when she tried, she would dream of the sun shattering into gold dust, she would see oceans rise and swallow cities, she would feel the ache of love not yet born and the sorrow of goodbyes not yet spoken. Her heart was a river carrying the weight of what was coming, and she did not know how to let it go. Each morning she would walk to the edge of the town where the wind carried the smell of salt and rusted metal, and there she would watch the horizon trembling with light. She would whisper to herself, tomorrow is waiting, and somewhere in that waiting was something calling her. There was a boy she saw often in her visions, his face was always half hidden by mist, his eyes a color she could never name, but every time she dreamed of him her pulse would slow, her breath would fade, and she would wake with tears she could not explain. She did not know if he was real or only a fragment of what tomorrow wanted her to remember. The village grew uneasy around her, people avoided her eyes, children whispered behind her back, they said she brought bad luck, they said her dreams were curses not gifts. But Lyra kept walking each dawn to the edge of the sea, listening to the hum of waves that seemed to know her secrets. One day while standing there she felt the air shift, the world grew still as if holding its breath, and when she turned she saw him, the boy from her dreams, standing in the morning light, his shadow long against the sand. He did not speak at first, neither did she. It was as if words would break the fragile thread holding that moment together. His eyes found hers and she felt every tomorrow she had ever seen collapse into that instant. He finally said, I have been looking for you, and she answered, I have been waiting for you. The wind moved through them like memory, carrying the scent of something old and inevitable. He told her his name was Kale, and that he too had dreams, dreams of a girl who remembered what had not yet come, dreams of a voice calling him across the years. He said he had followed those dreams until they brought him to her, and Lyra knew then that the path she had been walking alone was never hers alone to bear. They sat by the sea for hours, speaking of fragments and futures, of faces they both had seen in sleep, of storms and silences that echoed in their bones. And as the sky turned red with the dying sun, Lyra felt something shift inside her. For the first time the future did not feel like a burden, it felt like a promise. But that night when she closed her eyes the visions changed. She saw fire, she saw people running, she saw the sea rise not as waves but as walls of water swallowing everything. She heard Kale calling her name from somewhere deep beneath the roar. She woke gasping, her heart breaking open. She ran through the dark to his house and found him already waiting at the door, his face pale, his eyes wide. He said, you saw it too, didn't you? She nodded. The world is ending, she whispered, and he said, no, it is beginning. Night held them in its trembling hands as if afraid to let go of what was already written. The stars above flickered like dying candles and the wind howled through the hollow streets whispering secrets neither of them could understand. Lyra stood beside Kale, her pulse echoing in her ears like the rhythm of an unseen clock counting down to something vast and unseen. She could feel the edges of time bending around them, soft and fragile like wet paper, and for the first time she felt fear, not of what she saw but of what she might lose. They walked together through the sleeping town, their footsteps silent on the cobblestones. Every window seemed to watch them, every shadow seemed to breathe with hidden life. Lyra's visions were clearer than ever now. She could see moments peeling away from reality like petals from a dying flower. In one blink she saw the town drowning in waves, and in the next she saw it covered in dust and silence. She saw faces she loved fading into memory before they ever truly lived. She looked at Kale, his face calm but his eyes holding the same storm she carried within. He said we cannot stop what is coming, but we can choose how we face it. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to think there was still a thread of hope somewhere buried beneath the weight of what tomorrow had already decided, but the more she tried to hold on, the faster it all slipped away, her mind a river that refused to be still. They reached the sea again, the horizon a faint silver line where night kissed the edge of dawn, and there beneath the cold shimmer of the moon Cale reached for her hand, his touch steady, grounding her in a way nothing else ever had. He said, "There is a place beyond the storm. I have seen it in my dreams. It is not an end but a crossing, and when you remember tomorrow, Lyra, remember this: there is always something after the breaking." She wanted to ask him what it meant, but before she could speak the earth trembled, a deep low sound like the heartbeat of the world waking from a long sleep. The waves began to move faster, darker, and the wind grew sharp like 1,000 whispers crying. All at once she saw flashes in her mind, cities burning, mountains collapsing, faces vanishing into mist, and in the center of it all she saw a door glowing with pale blue light calling to her like a memory she had not yet lived. Cale's voice broke through the noise. "We have to find it before it's too late," he said, and Lyra nodded, though she did not know where the door was or what lay beyond it. She only knew that it was tied to her, that somehow she was the key. She felt the pull in her chest guiding her through the dark. They ran past the edge of the sea, through the forest where trees bent like old watches, through the valley where the air shimmered with strange heat, and every step brought the future closer and closer until she could taste it in her breath. When dawn finally came, the world was no longer the same. The sky had split open with colors that did not belong to this earth. The sea had turned still like glass, and the birds had stopped singing. Lyra felt a deep quiet inside her, as if everything she had ever seen was waiting to unfold. She looked at Cale and saw exhaustion in his eyes, but also lighter. Light that came not from the sun but from within. He said, "The door is near, I can feel it," and she could too. It was somewhere in the ruins ahead, half buried under what remained of an old temple. They walked slowly, every sound echoing too loud in the silence. The ground was cracked with silver veins pulsing faintly like veins of time itself. She placed her hand on the stone and the world tilted, her mind flooded with images of countless tomorrows, all folding and unfolding at once. She saw herself standing at the edge of this same moment, over and over, living, dying, remembering, always remembering. Cale reached out and touched her shoulder, and suddenly the chaos stopped. Everything went still except for the soft hum of the door before them, glowing brighter now like the pulse of something alive. It opened soundlessly, revealing nothing but a blinding white light that seemed to stretch forever. Lyra felt warmth rush through her body, filling every empty place. She did not understand what it was, but it felt like truth. Cale said, "We have to go through," and she whispered, "What if we never come back?" And he smiled softly, "Maybe that is the point. Maybe we were never meant to stay." She looked into the light and saw fragments of faces, people she loved, people she had not yet met, all calling her forward. She took his hand and stepped inside. For a moment there was no sound, no sight, no time, only a vast feeling of falling and rising all at once. She felt every heartbeat she had ever lived, every tear, every joy, every future blending into one endless moment. She saw herself as a child, as an old woman, as a star drifting through galaxies. She saw Cale's eyes glowing beside her, and then everything dissolved into silence. When she opened her eyes, she was standing in a place that looked like the world, yet not the same. The air shimmered with gold and the ground pulsed with quiet life. She turned to Cale, but he was no longer beside her, his shape fading like mist. She called out his name, but only the wind answered softly, "Tomorrow, Lyra, tomorrow." Part 3. The silence around her was alive. It breathed, it moved, it whispered in a language she felt more than heard. Lyra stood at the edge of a world she did not recognize, yet somehow remembered. Every color shimmered like liquid dream. The sky rippled with threads of light weaving and unweaving before her. She could feel the pulse of creation beneath her feet, like the heartbeat of a living memory. She knew she was no longer in the world she had left behind, but in the space between what was and what would be. She called for Cale again, her voice soft like the wind through glass, but no answer came, only the echo of her own breath returning to her like a promise. She closed her eyes and saw flashes of him, the way he had smiled, the warmth of his hand, the way his eyes had seen her even when she was lost in the labyrinth of tomorrows. She whispered his name again, and this time she felt it not as sound but as warmth in her chest, as though he were inside her heart, not gone, only changed. The air shimmered before her, and from the golden mist shapes began to form people she had known, people she had seen only in her visions. They were smiling, reaching out their hands, their voices soft like distant songs. She realized these were the tomorrows she had carried within her all along, not visions of what was to come, but fragments of the world she was helping to build. Each dream she had, each memory she held had been a thread in the tapestry of what was being born. A figure stepped forward from the light. It was her mother, her eyes filled with a tenderness Lyra had long forgotten. She touched her daughter's face and whispered without words, "You were never cursed, you were chosen to remember what others forget, the love that exists beyond time, the hope that blooms even in endings." Lyra felt tears that were not tears flow from her soul. She wanted to speak, but no sound came, only the pulse of light through her skin. She saw her village then, not as it was but as it could be. She saw laughter rising like dawn. She saw children running through streets that shone with morning gold. She saw the sea calm again, carrying whispers of peace. She saw herself walking among them, not as the girl who remembered tomorrow, but as the woman who had lived it and brought it home. She understood then that the door she had entered was not an escape but a return. The world she had known would not end, it would transform, and she was part of that transformation. A soft voice filled the air behind her. It was Kale, his form now woven from light and air, his smile gentle like the first rain. He said, "You found it, the place beyond the storm." She turned to him, her heart trembling. She said, "I thought I lost you." And he answered, "You cannot lose what has become one with you. I am in every tomorrow you remember and every breath you take." The light around them deepened, turning into hues of silver and rose. The air hummed with something vast and peaceful. She felt the weight of her visions lift from her shoulders, and in its place was clarity. She understood that remembering tomorrow was not a burden but a bridge, a way for love and hope to travel across time. She stepped closer to Kale, their hands meeting once more, and where their fingers touched the world began to bloom, fields of light stretching into eternity. Time folded gently around them, and for a moment she saw all her lives at once. The child staring at the sea, the girl lost in her visions, the woman walking through the dawn. Each version of her smiled, each one whispering, "You did not just remember tomorrow, you became it." The light grew brighter until there was nothing else, only warmth, only stillness, only the endless hum of existence becoming something new. When the light faded, she found herself standing on the same shore where it all began, the sea calm and golden, the town sleeping behind her as if untouched by time. The air was soft and full of promise. She felt no fear, no confusion, only peace. She knew the storm had passed, not because it had been avoided but because it had been understood. She walked to the water's edge, the waves gentle against her feet. She looked at the horizon and whispered, "Thank you," though she did not know to whom. Perhaps to time itself, perhaps to the boy made of light, perhaps to the endless tomorrow that had taught her what it meant to truly live. The sun began to rise, its first rays spilling across the sky, painting the world in colors she had never seen before, and for the first time she did not see what was coming. She simply saw what was now, and it was enough. She smiled, her reflection shimmering on the golden water, and in that reflection she saw Kale beside her, not as a shadow, not as a vision, but as a presence that would never fade. She closed her eyes and let the warmth of the new day wrap around her. And so the girl who remembered tomorrow finally understood that tomorrow was never meant to be feared, it was meant to be lived, and in that understanding the world began again, quietly, beautifully, eternally.